Hi, It Girls. Today, we are doing After Hours, the It Girls Guide After Hours, which is just me yapping. I'm realizing that we have new listeners. Some of you might not know me, so I figured I would give you a kind of background on myself and kind of how I got here. Maybe not here. I'm in LA right now. I do live in New York. Born and raised in New Orleans, so that gives a little context for me being a little bit crazy sometimes. It is weird to grow up in kind of like a party city, but I do think that made me get a lot of stuff out of my system kind of early on. And then I moved to New York back in, I guess, what was that now, 2015. So I think that makes me almost a New Yorker. And I guess like the elephant in the room is that I was married. I am now divorced, which is cool now because I think Emily Ratajkowski made being a like 30-ish-year-old divorcee cool. And I think that it's not a defining part of my life, but I do think I've learned so many lessons since then. I figured that I would share them with you guys, I guess. If you can't tell now compared to other episodes, I'm a little more nervous. It is different to talk about yourself in this context, but I figured I owe it to you guys. So I'll start with how things went with my divorce. I think that is not the most interesting thing about me, but the most interesting thing that has kind of triggered a bunch of other series of events in my life. I met my ex-husband when I was 22, 23, and I was obviously a much different person then than I am now. And on another episode, maybe I will go into the details of how that relationship went. But I do think that me leaving my last relationship forced me to make such a big change in my life that I was forced to learn a lot of lessons. And although I don't think that anybody should go into a relationship knowing that, or a marriage, I should say, knowing that it's not going to work out, there is something to say for me being so present in the fact that I wasn't happy, that I'm able to reflect a little bit differently on that experience. And so I got married in 2021, or I actually legally got married in 2020 and then had my wedding a year later. And I think that gives context for why that even happened. I think if I hadn't got legally married, I probably wouldn't have had the wedding. But it kind of snowballs. And I think anybody can kind of relate to how when you have the outside pressure of having people around you they're happy for you, right? Like it's a wedding, everybody's excited. And then you start to feel like you're going to disappoint somebody, right? So I really felt like if I called off this wedding, I had this big snowball effect of like an avalanche really of all these other people that it would affect. And, money is a part of it, right? I'd put down deposits and whatnot. And, I was so worried that maybe it was me, maybe like there was something I was doing wrong in my relationship that I could fix, right? I was a people pleaser and I wanted to fix everything. And I felt like the universe just kept giving me these signs that I wasn't in the right place, that I wasn't doing the right thing. And I look at it like if you're, burnt out at work, right? Like then your body will start to shut down, you get sick, and that's your body's way of forcing you to slow down. And I feel like there is these events in my life where, I have the word momentum tattooed on my ankle because I would always say I want to go with momentum. Like if the universe is happy for you, if you're doing the right thing, the momentum is going to take you into that place. And when things aren't going well, you're going to have a lot of obstacles. And I can get into the details of some of those instances, but there was 3 main things that happened in my relationship that I feel like, it was things that happened in life that ended up being negative or negatively affecting my relationship, where I was like, this is the universe's way of saying, get out. And they kind of progressively got worse. The first being, I hope my ex doesn't watch this. Like, this is not very flattering of him, but he's a good person, just not the right person for me. But during COVID, we had like just gotten married, and I got COVID, and we were in St. Bart's with my friend Bryn, and it was the last day, and he needed to get back to work, so he was going to leave me there, and it was right before Christmas. And I was like, not only am I going to have to spend my first Christmas away from my family, I'm going to have to spend it alone. And I just couldn't understand why he didn't want to be there for me. And it was something where at that point I was still reflecting and thinking to myself, oh, there's something I'm doing wrong that is making it so that this person doesn't want to be there. Or maybe I'm being too sensitive and I should just be able to do this on my own. And looking back, that wasn't the way to look at it, right? And then there were two other big instances where I will tell those stories another time. They're a little bit, I don't want to get too heavy today, but I felt like these situations kept getting worse and worse to a point where I'm like, I'm going to have to be like dead on the street for this person to like show up for me. And again, I don't think that's entirely his fault. I think that, there's in any situation, you can always look in at yourself and say, what did I do to contribute to this? Even if it's just not leaving the situation. I know, of course, in certain situations, like domestic violence and abuse and whatnot, there are all these different factors, but this was just an unhealthy, like toxic relationship. And eventually something really big did happen where it was like, I thought to myself, if any of my friends came to me and said, this happened, I call it emotional abandonment. It's kind of like the blanket term I'll use for how the relationship ended. But something big happened to me where I really needed someone. And at that point, I didn't feel like I could go to anyone else because I knew if I went to my parents or my friends about what happened, I knew it would reflect badly on my ex, that he wasn't around for it, or that he wasn't showing up for me in that way. And I kept it to myself and internalized it for about a week until I thought to myself, if I can't rely on my partner, the person I'm supposed to spend the rest of my life with, like, what am I doing? And I decided to blow up my life. And I say blow up my life because that's what it looked like from the outside. For me, internally, it was the best thing I could have done. But from the outside, I presented like I had everything. I just bought a house. I had this huge wedding that was in magazines, and my career at the time was starting to really thrive, and I was really excited about all those things. But I realized my head was in all of that, and I was such a hard worker and all this stuff because I was trying to avoid what was happening in my relationship. And when I decided to leave, it's funny because when I look back at that time, you're supposed to be really sad, right? And I was sad about things that emotionally had happened. And other things that I had went through, but a huge part of why I kind of went into hiding, I would say, when I started the process of my divorce or just leaving my ex-husband, was because I was so happy, and I was like embarrassed and felt weird about how happy I was for doing something that from the outside looked really bad. I mean, I was leaving a marriage 8 months after my wedding, and I knew people around me weren't going to understand it. They were going to think that I knew that they were going to assign their own narrative, right? Why would someone leave after, only 8 months? I knew people were going to think someone cheated, something like that happened, which I will say right now was not the case. But this piece of advice my dad gave me a long time ago stuck with me. And when he gave me this advice, he meant it about business. I don't think he necessarily meant it about life, but he said, if you fail, fail fast. And what that means is if something goes wrong, recognize that you failed, pivot, and move on. And that's what I did. I woke up one day, and it was something that I'd been thinking about, but when I made the decision to leave, it was on a morning. And I think I made the decision around like 11:30, and by 4 p.m., all my shit was out of my apartment and was moved into my house. Thankfully, at the time, I'd purchased a house that had tenants living in, and my tenant had moved out like a month or so before, and I was just going to be like fixing it up, and I moved right in. And it was the best decision I could have ever made for myself, despite the fact that everyone around me was telling me like, are you sure? Are you sure? This, like, you're probably going to change your mind. And I knew in my gut that for so long I had been listening to what everybody else thought my life should look like. And I'd been trying to create a life that I thought that other people wanted for me. And I realized, like, I'm the only person that has to get up every day and live my life, right? You know, no matter what kind of opinion somebody else has about your life, it's fleeting, right? No one fucking cares that much. Of course, like, people who love you care about you being happy, but for so long I was worried about what people would think. And then I realized, like, wait, so I'm going to live an unhappy life just because I'm afraid someone else is going to talk shit. And guess what? They're going to talk shit either way. So you might as well have them be talking shit about your life that you enjoy living than talking shit about a life that you feel miserable in. And I think the most important kind of lesson I got out of that wasn't even about leaving a relationship that was bad. It was what I did to kind of pick myself back up. And I'd say first things first was leaning on my friends, because for so long I was hiding what was going on from the majority of my friends and family, and then realizing, okay, I can't necessarily do all this stuff alone. Even if it's not that I wanted people there with me physically all the time, I realized I needed to at least tell people what was going on and be honest with them, because I knew that would keep me honest with myself, right? If I said, this is what was really happening in the relationship, and this is why I was so miserable, I knew I couldn't hide behind this like facade I was putting up, and it would keep me honest. And I decided it was in May that I left. And so for the summer, I call it like my eat, pray, love, eat, pray, build summer. And I just did DIY in my house like for the entire summer. I had a couple nights out where I let off some steam, right? But really I spent a lot of time by myself and like learning to, one, like myself, and two, how to just be alone with myself. And I went into therapy, and that is the best thing I have done for myself. And I committed it was like the day after I left, I had this list of therapists that a counselor from school when I was in grad school had given me. And I had done a few sessions. I'd lost a few friends during COVID, and it really like taken a lot out of me. So I started seeing a counselor through, I went to Fordham. I got my MBA at Fordham, and but you could only do 10 sessions. So I remember the last 3 sessions with this counselor who had helped me so much were really just about, okay, how am I going to transition? And she had given me this list of different therapists who she knew all did the same kind of therapy that she does, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. And I had sat on this list for about a year and never called anyone because I was not ready, I guess. And the day after I left, I sat and I was like, okay, I'm just going to start calling them. And the first one I called didn't answer. The second one that I called wanted to set up a second time to, an additional time to schedule a consultation a week out. And I scheduled it and I said, okay, I guess I'm waiting a week. And the third one I called, she answered on the second ring. I don't know why I remember that, but she answered on the second ring. And I think that's when I realized I called her cell phone. And she was available, and we had our consultation right there. And she ended up telling me about a year later, shout out to my therapist, Elise, I love you. About a year later, she ended up telling me that day, she doesn't know why I had her cell phone number. I think it used to be on some other sort of website, I guess, that my old therapist old counselor had gotten. But she told me that day she was waiting for like Spectrum to show up at her house. And when I called from a New Orleans number and an area code she didn't recognize, she assumed that it was, Spectrum showing up to set up her Wi-Fi. And it was me. And I kind of just broke down to her and on that, 25-minute call. And she said on that call that in the last 6 months, I had dealt with more than what most people have to deal with in a lifetime. And she was like, I'm going to help you. And I am so grateful to her for that. But also when I look back, I'm like, that was definitely the universe like giving me something, something to look forward to. And I just remember like having this big sigh of relief, like, yes, okay, I have someone who can help me that I won't. And I think something about the fact that I was going to be like paying her and that she wasn't directly associated with my life made me feel better that I didn't feel like I was a burden on her, right? That's her job as a therapist, to let me burden her. And I committed right there and I said, I want to do 2 sessions a week for a year, no matter what. And I knew that was a lot, but I felt like I had spent so much time the last, the previous like 5 years, really in the 3 years right before that were really bad. I felt like I had wasted so much time. And I was like, I didn't get out of this relationship to waste any more time. So if I'm going to figure this out, I'm going to figure this out now. I'm going to do all the things. And I told her, if I need to like crack open and tell you every little last detail and get as vulnerable as I possibly can, if that's going to help me, I'm just going to do it. And I don't know what else to say, but it fucking worked. Okay. It fucking worked. And I still see her to this day, not as frequently. I still do every other week-ish. And sometimes I'm feeling like I need a little bit more and I do it more often. Sometimes I skip a week, but I never, if I feel like I need to talk to her and I need that kind of perspective, I always go to her. But yeah, so therapy, we all need it to some degree. And look, if you can't afford therapy, talk to a friend, talk to your parents, go on the internet, find a community. There's a lot of different ways that you can find the benefits of therapy. But really, I think that is like what changed my life really is therapy, but also just making the decision to commit to changing and commit to doing the hard work. Because for a long time, despite what I would tell myself, which was, you're a really hard worker, you're making really good money, you're working on these amazing projects, you work hard, so therefore, like, you're doing the right thing. And I realized I was kind of lying to myself because I was doing the easy kind of hard work, if that makes sense. It was easy for me to put my head down and, stay up all night and pull all-nighters and get work done, right? It was easy for me to be there for other people and try to be a really good friend because that meant that I didn't have to deal with my own shit. And dealing with my own shit was really fucking hard. And I won't lie to you and say that it's easy or that it's going to happen overnight. But what I will say is that it will pay off. And I've told this story to a few friends, but I remember the day that I woke up happy for the first time in years. Because I know people aren't happy every day of the week, right? But I had forgotten what it felt like to just have a baseline of being content, because I had spent the last 3 to 4 years waking up like almost in a panic and just like filled with anxiety. I always had this like never ending to-do list and was always feeling I was behind and choosing all these different things that were really important that I had to do because I had to focus on these other things. And it was about a year after doing therapy and a year after I'd ended what was a really unhealthy relationship. And I want to emphasize that like I didn't wake up happy because I was in a new relationship. And I had committed to not dating for at least a year because my relationship itself had been over, right? But I knew that I needed some time. And I had just started like going on dates and just like exploring the idea of having someone be in my life. But it was July 4th weekend. And I had a bunch of my friends come out to the Hamptons, and it was like my parents were out there, and it was my friends, I'll give them a shout out, Bryn, Kat, and Miriam. And we just had the most fun girls weekend where we were just like bopping around, giggling all the time. Like I will go back and look at these videos. We're literally rolling around on the floor laughing and just being so goofy. And everyone left. And the weekend was over, and the next morning I woke up and I will never forget that feeling of being like, whoa, I'm happy. And I texted my therapist to say, I woke up happy today. And up until that point, there was a few times where I'd have moments that made me happy, right? Where I was like laughing or, in a good mood, but I hadn't woken up happy in like a long time. And it wasn't that every single day after that I woke up happy, right? It was maybe like a month later. And then it started happening more frequently. And I can say now I'm, 2.5 years out of that, and 2.5 years into therapy and choosing myself and making these different decisions. And I wake up every day pretty fucking happy. And that doesn't mean that like there's not bad things going on or that things aren't stressful, but my baseline now is happy. And that is from the work that I've done. And it's also a choice, right? I now choose to not let certain things affect me, right? If, old me, if I was dating someone and they didn't text me back, I would let that ruin my day. And one thing that divorce and it, blowing up my life, as I say, has given me is perspective. And I'm like, it's really not that fucking bad. And I live a very privileged life, right? I have a great relationship with my family that also took a lot of work. I have great friends. You can look at your life and find anything bad about it, right? But you can also find all the good. And I will say that, having privilege to some degree, I always say being privileged does not mean that bad things don't happen. I had a lot of terrible things happen in my life, but being privileged does give you the tools to get through those things more easily. And, I look at my life and I'm like, yes, these terrible things have happened and they've been hard. But if I didn't have the support systems that I have, the friends that I have, the physical abilities that I have, right, I would be so much worse off and it would be so much more difficult. And that has motivated me to figure shit out. Right? To like do the hard work. Cause I know it could be a lot harder even on the days that it is really hard. And yeah, just that like, I'll never forget waking up happy. And on my days where I'm not having the best day, I will like go back and look at photos and videos from that weekend and kind of put myself back into that headspace and be like, wouldn't you rather choose to be like this? When something bad happens, something hard happens, I'll let myself be sad. Sometimes I have to say, I'm going to give it a day. I'm going to let myself be sad for a day. And then tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to get back to doing what I need to do to get myself where I need to be. And, 2.5 years in, now I'm in a really healthy relationship. And I've made a career change. And that has also, a healthy relationship comes from, I know that I'm, therapy language, I'm securely attached, right? But what I do want to say is my relationship is not what makes me happy, right? It's an added bonus, but I wanted to make a clear effort to make sure that my happiness isn't coming from my relationship, because I do think as women, sometimes we can do that. And if all of your happiness is relying on another person, it's not only not sustainable, it's not fair to put that emphasis on someone else, right? Because that's a lot of pressure. I need to put it on myself. I need to make myself happy first before I can let somebody else in. And I know my boyfriend, brings a lot of joy into my life, but if he's not around, I'm okay. And, I always give the dating advice. I say like date like a divorcee, because you have the perspective of, I know what it's like to wake up every day and think, fuck, I have to be with this person for the rest of my life. And this is not good. And again, I don't want to shade my ex too much, but I just knew it wasn't a happy relationship. And I know so many people who just feel like they made a decision, they have to stick with it. And marriage should be forever. And, you should take that commitment very seriously and whatnot. But sometimes we make mistakes. I made a mistake. I made a bad decision to marry this person. And it was not completely his fault how, things ended up not in the best place. But I made a choice and I realized I made a mistake. So I had to change that. And I think that's so important to figure out for yourself. And yeah, I guess that's just my advice, is to just take control over your life and know that it is okay to make a change and to like blow up your life and try something different. Like life is short, but it's also pretty fucking long, right? If we're happy, we're healthy, like you can pivot, you can do different things, and you can decide to be a different kind of person. You can decide to change your life. You can decide that different things are important to you. I mean, being in New York for as long as I've been, it was always very important to me to make a lot of money and have a big career and, have this notoriety. I think a lot of people in New York would be like, oh, I want to get on, Forbes 30 under 30. That was my thing forever. And then I made a career pivot right before I turned 30. And that meant, okay, I don't have that much time to figure that out. And now I look at my life and I think what I thought happiness was before is not what I feel like it is now. What I used to think happiness was very superficial, was very much like if you have a good job and if you're making good money and you have a relationship that looks good, then you're happy. And then I did all of those things, right? I did things in the order. I married a guy in finance who had a great job, and I went to business school and I had a great job, and I was making good money, and I bought a house. And if you're looking at it as just in list form, that looks like you have it all, but I was fucking miserable, right? And now my life is so much different and in a lot of ways a lot more simple. And I'm so much happier not looking to other people or other things for validation and deciding for myself, okay, what physically makes me feel happy? I feel good when I'm around these people. I feel good when I'm doing these things. I feel successful when, I've a good day to me now is completing a few good tasks, right, for work. It's like taking care of my body and my mental health. And it's usually has something to do with having like some sort of good connected conversation. I feel that's really when I feel like I've had a successful day, is when I've had a good connected conversation with someone. And that is what I've chosen as my own happiness for now. So, yeah, I think that's kind of where I want to like close it out for you guys, is just decide for yourself what happiness looks like for you and choose for yourself what you want your life to look like and do it. And don't worry about what other people are going to think. And don't worry if you change your mind, because we're human. We change our mind. It's a long life. And who you are 5, 10 years ago, even a year ago, doesn't need to be the same person. And yeah, I guess I'll close it out with shout out to my dad. If you fail fast and move on. So thank you guys. I'll see you next week.